Hello everyone, welcome to today's video where we are going to take a look at round 7 of the Chennai Open being held in Chennai from the 2nd of January to the 9th of January. So I was playing a very strong Turkmenistani guy. He was rated around 2200, and usually Turkmenistani people or players are a bit underrated, and I have had hard times facing Turkmen players in my past. I mean, I played around 2 people only, and I managed to score only half point. Although I was winning in both games, but yeah, they are like very hard to defeat. So I started out with c4, keeping things simple. I didn't prepare at all for this game. I prepared like for only 2 minutes to check what my opponent plays. But yeah, anyways, I started out with c4. After yesterday's loss, I wanted to keep things simple and just try to play my play like some original chess. So after knight f6 I played g3. I was thinking he would be prepared against my typical knight f3 e3 knight c3 kind of setup, so I tried to surprise him slightly with g3, and after c6 knight f3 d5 bishop g2 he played bishop f5, which is among the many moves possible here, like bishop g4 dc4 g6. So after bishop f5 I played queen b3, hitting the b7 pawn, and after queen b6 I played d3, trying to play bishop e3 next, forcing a queen exchange, and my opponent went for knight d7. Actually my prep was against e6, and here I was going to play bishop e3, and here I have some chances along the a file, and maybe something like knight c2 b4 b5 in the future. But he played knight bd7, and I played bishop e3. I took on c5 on d5, and after cd5 I played bishop e3, which is a slight inaccuracy. Well, I was thinking that after bishop e3 queen b3 a b3 and something like a6 knight c3 and e6 we are going to transpose into the line I had prepared. I mean, not prepared, like I saw this line around many years ago, but actually after a b3 black is not compelled to protect the a7 pawn, so, and he went for e5 trying to create some aggression in the center. So that is why actually knight c3 was a better choice, and after knight c3 something like e5 doesn't work, because I can just take the knight on the pawn on d5, and after queen b3 knight takes f6 comes with a check, and after knight f6 a b3 I am well, it's not a clear pawn up, but I am at least comfortably better in this position. But I played bishop e3, and after queen b3 a b3 played e5, and this point is that after rook takes a7, which is what I played, I just didn't believe that my bishop can get trapped on a7, and that's true to some extent, but I'm losing a lot of time. Black has a great central control and much more active pieces, and my bishop on a7 is doing nothing, and my knight on b1 is yet to be developed. It develops with a tempo with bishop b4 check, and I went knight fd2. I think knight bd2 was also possible, but I think something like king e7 and then rook 8 coming next is already pretty hard for me. Also, I was like, if let's say I play something like castle, there's also this idea of e4 and hitting the knight on f3, and if this knight moves, black can just take my knight on d2. And also after knight fd2 I wanted to create some chances in the center, and I wanted to break this black's strong center with f4, so that I get this very juicy d4 square for my juicer. But after bishop b4 check, the engine says knight c3 was a better choice, but I think like I did not really consider it very that well, because after d4 I think what the engine is saying is maybe to take on d4, takes, and I'm a piece down, but I have 3 pawns for that. You can't really count them as an extra pawn, but maybe a pawn, and like it's half a pawn, let's say. But I have these strong central pawns, and my pieces are doing good. And after king d2 rook a1 I'm going to get active. Maybe this was something that I should have played, but that's according to the engine. I didn't find it very convincing during the game. So I played knight fd2 and my opponent went for castles. Actually I was really worried about b6, which the engine says is the best move, and after here I was planning to go for castles, and after castles threatening to trap my bishop with the rook a8, I wanted to go for knight c3, and after something like rook 8 I can go rook a1 and go rook a4 next and save my bishop somehow. I mean, hang on to my bishop. I'm not so sure if it's going to be saved eventually, but yeah, that was my plan. And after knight c3, let's say if something like d4 is coming, then I just play knight e4, and after mass exchanges in the center, rook 8 is not possible, by the way, because of this discovered check, and I pick up the exchange. And after knight e4, let's say he plays bishop e4. I think I'm doing pretty good in this position. I mean, I'm either going to play rook c1 or rook a1, and it's my bishop is going to be in no trouble. So after castles, I played f4. My point was after e4 to go short castle and take on f4 with my rook, but I was a bit worried about bishop d6, and after g takes f4, there's this move rook e8. I think hitting my pawn on e2, which I cannot move unfortunately because the pawn on d3 is falling, and e4 can be played because it's protected by white many times. But maybe, yeah, and I cannot protect my e2 pawn with bishop f3 because my f4 pawn is going to fall then. But after f4 castles, I was also considering for a long time bishop d2, knight d2, and now rook e8, again hitting the pawn on e2. I have to take there, and maybe now rook takes e2 is a move. Yeah, and now this I mean should be equal, but black is grabbing a lot of pawns now here. But after my opponent played e4, which is much more aggressive move, but I was already sure that I'm fine in this position, and I played d takes e4, knight takes e4. I get this very very strong square on d4 for my bishop, and that's exactly what I did. I dropped my bishop back to d4. Well, bishop e3 would have been making more sense, since I also protect the d2 knight, and I am planning to go short castles next, unless for this great move rook e8, because after castles black has this nice discovered attack with knight takes g3, h takes g3, and rook takes e3, and now all my pawns are hanging, and I think I'm in deep trouble here. Even something like knight takes d2 is a move. I think bishop d2, and now bishop d2, knight d2, and now rook e2, and my knight is in some trouble, and if I move my knight, then my pawn on b2 is falling. But I played bishop d4, and after knight d2, rook a8 was played by my opponent, and I think it's the best move because I was threatening to go bishop c3 next, getting rid of this annoying pin, and then I wanted to go for short castles, and maybe rook c8 was another move which was possible, but I think I would have gone bishop c3 here, and after takes rook takes, I have bishop d5, and I'm a clear pawn up, and no need to I have no complaints in this position. After rook 8, I played e3, creating some room for my king, and here I thought for a long time, and I was almost going to play bishop c3 here, but bishop c3 is actually a mistake, because after bishop c5 I was wanting to play knight f3 and hinting at going knight d4 next, but this actually loses, and I saw it at a very later stage, but thankfully I saw it. Thereafter bishop e3, I have literally no moves and nowhere to avoid rook a1 mate, and if I move my king, let's say, black still goes rook a1 check, and after knight e1, just my very very passive pieces speaks for themselves, and I think I'm completely lost in this position. Something like just bishop e4 maybe is is completely winning for black. But thankfully I saw it in time, and after e3 my opponent went for bishop g4. Actually, the most critical move according to me was bishop d3, but here I saw this very useful move, king f2, and after bishop d2 I can play rook d1, pinning the two bishops, and I'm having no trouble. Black is going to lose either of his juicers, and I will be left with double juicers, and in the endgame they are like very ravaging. So I thought I had like very good chances of winning this game if it followed this path, and something like bishop e3, I just take on e3 with my bishop, and then the d5 pawn is going to fall. So my opponent played bishop g2, bishop g4, and his point was if I play bishop c3 he can just take, and now rook a1, king f2, rook a2. And the point is I don't have rook d1 anymore, and maybe I should like I have to play king e1, but then after knight c5 I'm just getting roasted here. After h3, trying to kick away this bishop, my point was like after rook a1, king f2, if my opponent takes on d2, I take on g4. But of course after bishop h1 he took on my pawn on h3, and after knight b1 he plays bishop e6 back, protecting the d5 pawn. I played knight c3, and here my opponent thought for a long time, and he thought for a long time over here. I was a bit surprised, and he played bishop e6, which is kind of the only move in the position to save the pawn, by the way. And after knight c3 he plays bishop takes c3. What was worrying him was after knight f6 I could just take the knight on f6, gf6, and he told that I could just bring my king over, and I had a really strong position. And but the thing was like I was calculating this position for a long time, and here after king d4, king d6 I did not find anything in my calculation. But if let's say my king was not on d3, this move f5 would have been possible, and deflecting this bishop, the most important defender of white's pawns. And after bishop f5 I could have played knight takes d5, but since there's a check now, that's not possible. So I thought that I had nothing here. But maybe if my opponent played bishop g4, knight f6, I would have found that after bishop 6, gf6 I have this great move g4, which is kind of very annoying for black. And the point is that after bishop takes g4, which is a blunder, I have knight takes d5, attacking the bishop, and forking this bishop and this pawn. And not only the pawn, because if black moves this bishop to let's say a5, then I take the pawn on f6, and there's yet another fork, and I fork both my opponent's king and bishop, and I'm going to be a piece up. So, and with g4 I'm threatening to go f5 next and pick up the d5 pawn, and probably the best move for black here is bishop takes c3 and c3, and bishop g4, bishop d5. But since I have like these two strong pawns here, I really like my chances, and these pawns are doubled for black, and this f7 pawn is going to be an eternal weakness. So I think after something like b6 I could have just played c4 as before, or bring out my king over here, because this pawn is going to go nowhere with this moves. I'm just going to be faster here, and yeah, so I think I would have won after knight f6, but my opponent plays bishop c3, which is more accurate actually, and after bc3 plays f5, trying to create some sort of fortress here, so that I do not have any scopes of pushing either of my pawns. For king e2, king f7, I played king d3, and here he lashed out with b5, which I think was a bit hurried. It's the pawn on b7 is quite safe, but when it comes to b5 it's prone to some attacks either via the king or via the bishop maneuvers. So and also the pawn on b5 is a bit hard to protect, because it has to be protected by the light square bishop, and because the king is not going to be in time there, because it has to protect the g7 pawn, and it's quite tough for black to defend here already. So I played bishop f3, trying to reroute my bishop to this e2 square, trying to put pressure on the b5 pawn, and after king e7 and king e7 was a great move actually, because after king bishop takes g7 there's knight c5 check, and if I play king c2 protecting the b3 pawn, he has knight e4, and I cannot like he's trying to say that he's just grabbing my g3 pawn, and I can do nothing about it, because if I take then black just takes, and it's a draw due to the opposite color bishops. So I played and if bishop g7, knight c5, I play king d4, then knight check, he picks up the pawn, and after king e5, knight c5. I did not really find anything for white here. Maybe bishop d5 is possible, right? Yeah, so maybe something else would have been played. Yeah, king d4, then even still knight e4 is working, I think. King e5, maybe I have some chances here, but I did not find it over the board. Now he can take my pawn on c3. Yeah. So he can take my pawn on c3, and now the d5 pawn is protected, he can just go back next, and it's a draw. And so I played bishop e2, and after king d6 here, I was thinking for a long time, and I decided to just grab the pawn on g7, because I thought maybe I should stop the knight from coming to c5 with b4, but then he just plays g6, and after king c2, king c6, I have just nowhere to progress in this position. And I was also considering king c2 here, but after king c6, if I grab the pawn, then we are transposing to what happened in the game, and if I do something like king b2, trying to be smart with king a3, king b4, there's knight c5, and it's kind of forcing me to grab the knight on c5, which leads to a draw, I think, because after king a3 there's knight e5, and I can protect the g3 pawn, and if I play bishop c5, king c5, I think b4, king d6, like, sorry, not king d6, of course, drops the b5 pawn, king c6, king here, bishop here, king d6, this, and I think black is just in time to protect all his pawns, and he's going to go g6 next, and it's a draw. It's like the d5 and b5 pawns are his weaknesses, but he can always protect both of them with his bishop. So decided to preserve my bishop pair, and which is very important actually in endgames, and I took on g7, and after knight c5 check, I went back with king c2, king d4 of course drops the pawn on b3, and after king c6, bishop f6, knight e4, bishop h4, protecting my pawn. I played bishop d7, and here the best move for white according to the engine is bishop h5. I was actually considering, like, I had three pieces to move in this position: the king, this b3 pawn, or this bishop. But I actually completely forgot about this bishop in this particular instance, and I mean, if I thought about the bishop, I for sure would have played bishop h5 and activated my bishop, but it just didn't cross my mind during this particular time, because after bishop f7, bishop e6, bishop e8, like this, I think after this mass exchanges, should be winning, right? I don't know. It's so hard. Like, the engine says it's winning, but I don't know how to win it, honestly. Maybe I need to bring up my king first, but then there's knight c5 check. Yeah, I don't know really. So bishop d7, b4 was played, and after king d6, I played king d3. Again, bishop h5 was the best move according to the engine, and after king d3, bishop e8, I found my chance and broke through with g4. Now here my opponent plays the decisive mistake, the blunder of this game, which sealed the result kind of, with bishop d7. But actually I was considering bishop g6 for a long time, and after like I saw this variation with g5, king f, bishop f5, king d4, and knight d2, and my king is in some trouble now because knight b3 is a checkmate. So I had to play bishop d1. I was also considering e4 to make some breathing space for my king, but after d4 bishop b5 there's this cheeky trick in the end, and now it's black who is winning because my bishop on h4 is falling. It's a fork. But bishop d1 maybe could have been played, but I think something like bishop e4 and then knight f3 next cannot be stopped, and we are entering an opposite color bishop endgame, and so it should be a draw. So I tried to sorry about that. So bishop g6, I might have played bishop e1, and then I don't know how to progress, but I for sure would have found some way, something like knight f6, let's say. It forces g5, right? But after g5 the engine says that it's much better for white, but it's actually a fortress for black, and the engines don't understand fortresses, so it's going to shout that it's winning for white, but it's not actually win. But after bishop d7 I played this great move, bishop f3, and I am very happy I found it. And like I had foreseen this particular structure from here already, that I need to go bishop f3 and then break through with g4, but it came rather easily. Like the continuation was rather forced in this game. So after bishop f3, my point is if fg4 is played, then I just take on e4, and this opposite color bishop ending is winning for me. But I don't know what I would have done after bishop e6, honestly. Maybe just king d4 is possible. But now knight d2. Maybe I should drop back my bishop here, and then but now knight f6 is coming, right? King d4, knight d2, bishop e2, knight here check. Okay, so now king d3, and now this knight is getting trapped on b3 because knight a1 is the only square, and king b2 the knight is falling. Excellent. No, but now here king d3, there's knight c1 check, and this is a draw. Okay, I don't know how to win actually. Yeah, 92. So how do I progress here? Maybe bishop. No, bishop e2, just fg4 is coming, right? I need to ask an expert. Oh, gf5, bishop f5, and now king d4, knight d2. So the d5 pawn is falling now. Yeah. Okay, I had missed that the d5 pawn is not protected now because my bishop is on f3, unlike the previous variation. Yeah. So this was winning, and yeah. So fg4 was played in the game, and I was sure I was winning here. And after carefully pushing my pawn general advance, I managed to win this ending very comfortably. So I was kind of lucky that the opening phase didn't go up as per I expected, but I navigated through it quite accurately, and I'm happy that my quality of game hasn't been affected due to yesterday's loss. And yeah, so 3 more rounds to go. I'm trailing behind the leaders. There's 2 players at 6 out of 7, and around I don't know, maybe 8-9 players at 5.5, and then I'm at 5. So still 3 more rounds to go. Anything can happen in these games, and yeah, I'm really happy about the result and how I ground out a win into this game, and especially with preserving the double bishops. And yeah, So yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's recap, and have a good evening, night, day, afternoon, wherever you're from. And yeah, stay tuned to see how the tournament ends. And yeah, hope to see you tomorrow. uh, Goodbye. Hare Krishna.